Franken is speaking to several media outlets today in Minnesota, including the state's main paper, the Star Tribune. Franken tells the Tribune, quote, "I'm embarrassed and ashamed. I've let a lot of people down, and I'm hoping I can make it up to them and gradually regain their trust." He also says, "I don't remember these photographs. I don't. This is not something I would intentionally do. I know I have a lot of work to do to regain the trust of the people I've let down." The people of Minnesota, my friends and colleagues, everyone who counts on me to be a champion for women.
He hasn't really said anything new today that he hasn't said in various statements that he's released. He's responding to questions today, but substantially, from what I've seen so far, he's saying pretty much the same thing. And I think you touched on what may be, the most peculiar element of it, which is that to some degree, on some points, the senator seems to be trying to have it both ways. On the one hand, he's apologizing, he's embarrassed, he knows he let people down, and yet he doesn't seem to be acknowledging that he really did what these women have suggested he did in these photo opportunities.
Meaning he said in some photos he doesn't remember? You mean that?
He said he doesn't remember those photos and that he would never do such a thing intentionally, such a thing being putting his hand on their rear end. But they seem to be pretty clear that that's what he was doing. So I don't know if he's suggesting that they don't know the difference between an embrace and a grope. I guess he is saying that he thinks they're mistaken. And whether that will fly with constituents, I don't know. We'll find out.
So, Doug, overall, though, even though there has been that 8-day, silence, Franken has handled this rather differently, right? In terms of others who have been facing such allegations. He's had statements where he admitted to inappropriate behavior. He apologized. But then he was missing in action for a very long time, and then now has done an interview with your paper, and then we understand with the radio and even television stations.
I would disagree with you just a little bit. He certainly has admitted the photographic case with Leanne Tweeden on the airplane. Pretty difficult to deny what's there on the photographic record, and he's said there's no excuse for that, though he hasn't really explained what his intention was or what the meaning of it was. Other than that, he's said he doesn't remember the kiss the way she does, though he hasn't told us how he remembers it. And on the groping accusations, he basically seems to be saying that they misunderstood his overly enthusiastic embraces, which is not quite a complete admission, it seems to me.
Is this going to be difficult for him to continue doing his job and to continue to get the kind of support in his district that he enjoyed before these allegations?
Well, it certainly can't be helpful. I think the question of his ability to be effective going forward is an important one, for Minnesotans, and will play into their reaction to all of this in a big way. And of course, on the Democratic side, his ability to be effective as a standard bearer for the Democratic Party has got to be something that's very much on their minds. And, will this story and the potential, of course, of there being, further developments, will that be damaging to the party more broadly? It is worth remembering that we have a Democratic governor here in Minnesota, so were Senator Franken to depart, there isn't any question that another Democrat would be appointed in the short term, at least, to take his place. So I think those questions of whether he can be successful going forward are very important. Senator Franken is an unusual entertainer kind of politician. He likes to make jokes, but it's one thing for your senator to make jokes and another thing for him to become a joke. And I think that's the question as we go ahead. Can he get beyond this?
At the same time, he had become very serious and seemingly had become a rather respected member on a variation of committees in his line of questioning, and seemingly very dogged. But as you say, we'll be able to see in the short term, perhaps, what his constituents seem to think.
There's no question. There's no question that he has overcome, some difficulties in being taken seriously that began with his first run for office. And of course, he had a long career as a comedian and a satirist, and that included a lot of material that, frankly, we couldn't discuss on your air. And that career and that background got a lot of attention during that campaign, but Minnesotans elected him having been exposed to that. And then he did win their confidence by putting his head down, getting serious about policy, and becoming quite effective.